Okay, I think we'll get going. Good morning, everyone. I'm John Casper with the Oshkosh Chamber, and welcome to our virtual town hall series that we've been conducting weekly, almost weekly since the beginning of October. This morning we have our state senator with us, Dan Feyen. Dan, thanks for joining us. I think we've had you as a guest on this in past years, or past few months ago, I guess. So welcome and thanks for joining us this morning. For those listening in, we are recording this. So, if you want to go back later, you can do that at a later time. It'll be on our website probably later this afternoon. And if anybody has any questions to ask of the senator, just use the Q&A tab on the bottom of your screen and ask those, and I'll go through that after Dan makes his comments. So with that, I'm going to have Senator Feyen do his briefing, and then we'll follow up with questions and go from there. So Dan, show's all yours.
Sounds good. Thanks, John. First off, I just want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving tomorrow. Safe travels to everyone throughout the entire weekend, and good luck to all those deer hunters, and stay safe. So this session has been a good one. I just started my 5th year as your senator back in January, and shortly thereafter, the governor introduced his budget. The governor's budget added $8 billion in new spending. It included $1.5 billion in taxes and fee increases. Would have led to a almost $1 billion deficit in going into the next budget. So when he came out with that, we took a look at it and we said, we got to start over and craft a budget as we've done in the past, even under Governor Walker. We've set aside his budget, and the Joint Finance Committee worked to craft a budget that was acceptable to all parties involved in the legislature and would hopefully be a good enough budget to get the governor's signature. So the Republican budget that was put together over the course of the next 3-4 months included over a $2 billion income tax cut. Good portion of that is hitting the middle class tax cut. Over $600 million in property tax relief, which combined, this saves the middle class tax family an average of $1,200 per year. I'm proud that in all the budgets that I've been a part of, we've been able to cut or eliminate some taxes. So this also is, in the last 20 years, Wisconsin has lowered its tax burden on the citizens of Wisconsin the most of any state in the entire nation. So very proud of that as well. Some other highlights from the budget: it invests over $16 billion in education, K through 12, with 7 million more for mental health grants. UW Oshkosh, the second half of the Clo Hall, which is Clo 2, we call it in the Capitol. It provides essential funding for the challenges that kids have faced during the pandemic, getting kids back in school. We had some funding that was tied to if you were over 50% in person during the pandemic, you got a little extra bump because your kids were in school. That was good. Transportation, which is something that towns, cities, counties, all municipalities are always requesting more of. We invested over $100 million into a local rural roads program, a 2% increase in the general transportation aids, I should say. And then we also transferred $207 million into the transportation fund, because during COVID early on in 2020, fuel tax collection went way down due to nobody was driving, nobody was going to work. So we needed to get that up to a level to keep road projects on track to where they were going to be. So it's also the lowest level of bonding we've had in decades. So that's also a good thing. We're not borrowing money that we're spending. We're actually spending money that we have. So that's a good thing. Some level of bonding is not bad. And we did all this without raising any fees or taxes on fuel or registration in the transportation arena. Broadband, we added $125 million into broadband expansion grants. this is above and beyond what the federal government has put in on broadband grants and advancement of those programs, plus all the private money. So in Wisconsin, we're looking at probably pretty close to a little over $1 billion of private and public money from the federal, local, state money going into broadband, which brings up the question that I always have is how much can we really do in 1 year and continue to be in a good place, keep that moving forward. Healthcare, we $586 million increase in healthcare spending. We increased hospital reimbursement by $104 million. We raised nursing home reimbursement rates by 12%. So those are all good things. And we increased funding for community health and free clinics by $2 million each year of the budget. Election integrity, some that has come up since the last election. It comes up a little bit after every election. And I am of the belief that after every election, a major election such as the gubernatorial or the presidential, so every 2 years, we should be taking a good look at our election system to follow. Did we follow all the rules? Did we follow all the laws? Are there any processes that need to be improved? So there's been a good hard look done at that. The Legislative Audit Bureau for the state of Wisconsin, which is a nonpartisan audit bureau. If you ask anyone in the Capitol, I don't think they could tell you which way they lean one way or the other. They're very good at their jobs. They're auditors, so they get into details that you normally wouldn't think they would. They did an extensive audit. It took them months and months to do. They came up with a number of recommendations. And in those recommendations were things that were in bills that we have already passed through the Senate, and some have passed through the Assembly. And of those, there's been 8 that have gotten all the way through to the governor's desk. He's vetoed 8 election reforms. He signed 1. There's 3 more that the Senate has passed and the Assembly has not yet. And there's still a couple more hanging out there that we want to get done. But, basically some of this is just good cleanup of policy that where there was ambiguity on how things should be done. So we wanted to put it into state laws to make sure it's followed to the letter of the law on procedures. It's unfortunate the governor has vetoed 8 of these reforms. After the Audit Bureau came out with their recommendations, we will be looking at those bills again, making the appropriate changes. Now that a nonpartisan bureau in the state has came out with recommendations, we will put some of these back on the governor's desk and hopefully he will sign them into law. I do not expect that at all though. To get some of these signed into law, I think we're going to need a Republican governor to agree with us on that. So some of my legislative priorities over the last year, or almost a year now, is an overhaul of the state's unemployment system. As you know, during COVID, there was a spike in the unemployment claims, and the UI system and the people running unemployment were the people running the unemployment system did not do a very good job. Let's just go with that. And they proved that the system is time for modernization. So we did a bill to force their hand to make them do it. It is in the works. We're looking at making changes to various workforce housing policies to spur workforce housing development. As you know, we have a labor shortage, but it's not as easy as we just need to hire more people. They also need a place to live when they get into a certain area like Oshkosh, Fond du Lac, Omro, wherever it might be. Also making some changes to the qualified new business venture program. Got 2 bills out there to make that a little more user friendly and spur more investment in startup companies here in the state of Wisconsin. This is a good one that we tried to get done. I don't know if we're going to get it across the finish line. Right now, each legislative office, Senate and Assembly, gets an allotment of blue books. Blue books are the book that comes out every 2 years. Every Senate office gets 600 books, I do believe, and every Assembly office gets 300 books, whether you like it or not. We're changing it so that you can request as many as you need. The new blue books came in recently, and the dumpster outside of my window at the Capitol was for all the old blue books that never got used. And they went through dumpster after dumpster after dumpster. We have pictures to prove this. So we're just spending money and throwing it out every 2 years. So it's not a lot of money, but it's one little thing of waste that we can clean up. Blue books are not a bad thing, but we need to just make sure we're using the appropriate amount of it. One little thing we actually got done was, it may seem simple, but it changes state statute to permit the DOC, the Department of Corrections, to fly a drone over their facilities to check on security and other things. There was a law passed in my first session that banned drone flight over a correctional facility, even if you were the correctional facility. So we cleaned that up, made that change. We're ensuring remote dispensing at remote pharmacies, so that rural areas can have a pharmacy and they can do the consultation via telehealth. It makes it easier for rural areas to have pharmacy access. What else are we working on here? Let's take a look. Making various changes to the way private ponds are managed in the state. Right now, the DNR is requiring a permit for every pond that a licensed operator goes to work on. We're changing it to, if you're a licensed operator by DATCAP, that you just have to log what you're doing. You don't need to apply for a permit and pay for a permit every time you go do a new pond that is privately owned and does not have any inlet or outlet of water for invasive species. We cut medical costs for patients by allowing we're working on for allowing patients to offer, or hospitals to offer discounts for prompt payment to patients on medical bills. Right now, that's not allowed. And then another one, anyone 15 and a half and older who applies for a hunting and fishing license could be on the donor registry via that means. We're looking to eliminate the swipe fee on the tax portion of a transaction made by retailers on a credit card swipe fee. So we're looking to eliminate the swipe fee on the tax portion of a retail purchase. So, which will really help with retail business bottom line, and you shouldn't have to pay for collecting the state's dollars. So, and we're also working on initiatives to help broadband throughout the state, like I mentioned earlier. Now we're just trying to figure out how much broadband can we actually do in 1 year. So, COVID is still a thing. It's still out there, but I think at the end of the day, it's up to the individual to make the best decisions for themselves and their families. I've said that all along, that you got to figure out what level of risk and fear you want to live with, like we do every day in our lives, and deal with it that way. If you want to go out and about, go out and about. If you don't, but take the precautions that you need to and move on from there. So that's where we are as of November 24th right now. We are going to be back on the floor again in January. So there's a bunch of committee hearings coming up dealing with some bills. But other than that, that's where we're at. And I will turn it over to John for some questions.
Great, thanks, Dan. It's going to be a shortened session coming up with, it's election year coming up. So, what are the GOP's priorities coming into the to the session? What is on their agenda? What do they think they can reasonably accomplish in a shortened session?
Well, one of the big things is, we're going to, like I said, retool some of these election bills that were done and see if we can get to a better place on that, where we can get a signature by the governor. Once again, I also do not expect him to sign off on those, but we want to try to get some changes done there. So going into the next election cycle, we have these processes cleaned up. It's basically guidance that was given by WEC, which is the Wisconsin Elections Commission. So if you hear the word WEC, that's what it is. That they follow the law as it was intended, and we can clean these processes up and make sure that we have a trust in our democracy in the next election moving forward. One thing I will touch on, we just passed in the last days we were on the floor, was redistricting, which the governor has vetoed. So now it's going to move into the next phase of whatever that might be. We expect it to go to the court system. The governor had the People's Maps Commission, if you recall. The Democrats didn't even like those, so they came in at the last second and drew their own maps because the people's maps were not good maps. They didn't like them, so they put theirs on the floor. We voted those down. Then we introduced the people's maps, which the governor wanted all along, and the Democrats have been saying for years, we need a People's Maps Commission or someone to draw them nonpartisanly. At the end of the day, they didn't want us to bring it up, but we introduced the amendment to have those brought up. And so they were running scared, figuring out how to do it. It was bipartisan support or non-support of those. So in the assembly, there were 22 Democrats that joined Republicans in voting against people's maps. We had one in the state Senate. So at the end of the day, we passed some maps that the legislature came up with, which is our constitutional responsibility to come up with those maps every 10 years. We did that, passed them, went to the governor's desk. The governor said he was going to veto those maps before he even saw those maps. So it's not a very good governing process, but he vetoed them. So now we're moving into the next process. On those maps, my area doesn't change much, but we will wait and see how it all plays out in the end. There's a bunch of hunting bills or sporting heritage bills out there right now. We passed a bunch of them. The assembly's got to pass some yet. We'll deal with some of that. And like I said, one dealing with prompt payment for medical billing. That's one of my bills that I'm working on, hoping to get that done yet this year, which says that if the medical institution that you are dealing with wants to offer you a reasonable discount for prompt payment of your medical bills, they are allowed to do so. For some reason, we are not allowing them to run their business as they see fit. And then also get a hearing on what we call a swipe fee bill, which is for all the retailers out there in the greater Oshkosh area. Right now, whenever there's a credit card transaction for something, you are paying a swipe fee on the tax portion of that bill so that you have the pleasure of sending us money all the time. So I want to eliminate the swipe fee portion on the tax portion of that so that you're not paying to do our work.
And with the redistricting map, is there's a drop dead date that the state needs to have that in place? Is that correct?
Well, there is, but it's up to a court to determine what they want to do. The drop dead date would really be April 15th. That's when new legislators and candidates can take out their papers to get their name on the ballot. But if you don't know where you are and what district, how do you do that? So April 15th, I would say, is the drop dead date. I would hope by the end of February, we have something in place so that for both sides of the aisle, they know what maps they're dealing with moving forward.
Well, the court's decision, the final decision, that those will be the districts that are drawn in place for the next 10 years. That's correct?
That is correct, unless we do a veto override, which is not going to happen. Right. So yeah, those will be in place for 10 years. The Supreme Court of the state of Wisconsin has agreed to take, I think it's called direct action on that. So it won't have to go through district courts right away. So it can make its way to the Supreme Court for them. So.
Right. In the last round of COVID, I guess, stimulus money, the ARPA money came out to local, allocated local municipalities, counties, they're all kind of working through that, trying to figure out where to spend that money. But the state of Wisconsin got an allotment also. So what's the status of that? How much was that? What's the governor? I mean, it's an election year. I'm sure he's going to be handing out some checks. For months. So
right
how
now,
much is that, and what can that be used for?
Right now, we believe the governor has approximately $2 billion to sprinkle around the state during an election year. But the Fiscal Bureau, which is our legislative fiscal bureau, they track all the finances. They always try and get a good handle on where all that money is. About once a month, they take a look at it. So my guess is there's about 1.5 to 2 billion that is yet to be spent or allocated. Early on, he said he allocated it all, but he really hasn't. He's going to put more into transportation, more into broadband, more into schools. He's going to sprinkle it all over the state. He has ultimate control of that. And then I just don't know where he's going to go with it all, but he will spend all of that within the next 12 months, I would say. And I think he has a little bit longer than that, but I don't see him not spending it for the election coming up. As far as municipalities go, there's a lot of money sitting in municipalities as well. There are strings attached to all this money too. My hope for the locals, such as townships, counties, cities, is that some of it gets different guidance and rules that says they can use it for transportation infrastructure. Even though we did an infrastructure bill at the federal level, and not we, they did a bill at the federal level on infrastructure, that cities, villages, counties, towns, they always need more money for roads. And I think if we can allocate that where they can use that in a certain way for infrastructure, that would be better use of that money. For example, the township in Winnebago County, Nepiescum, Rushford, they're not going to spend money on broadband upgrades because they just don't have enough money to do that kind of infrastructure. But roads is really what they need, things like that. So I just hope that that can be changed. City of Oshkosh as well.
Right. Well, you talk about infrastructure, Congress and the president signed the infrastructure bill. I think it's $1.2 trillion for a variety of different things. Some, infrastructure, some bailout of transit systems across the, failing transit systems across the country, which, I kind of question that logic, but that's part of the gig. So do we have any idea what the state's allocation of that 1.2 trillion is going to be, and is there anything been shared in terms of how that's going to be used?
I have not seen a report on the 1.2 to 1.3 billion that Wisconsin will get, and then how that breaks down in the state of Wisconsin. Because I'm sure the state of Wisconsin will get some, all the municipalities will get some again. According to Congressman Grothman, about 20% of that bill is actual physical infrastructure. Like you had mentioned, some of it's to go to mass transit bailouts or trolleys or things like that, they just aren't sustaining on their own. And then some of it goes into climate change type things as well, which is not really what I would call infrastructure. Infrastructure to me is ports, railroads, bridges, roads, tunnels, if you will, whatever it might be, something that helps move a good from point A to point
B. I think that's what a lot of people thought. And, there's been a brand new, redefine what infrastructure is. I think the next the reconciliation bill is human infrastructure. So
which I have no idea what human or social infrastructure is.
Right. Well, we'll find out shortly as that works through the process.
Gotta pass it to find it.
That's right. That's right. In the 3,000 pages of that massive bill. I think the state legislature did a great job in terms of providing tax cuts to property or to income taxpayers here in the state. But from a business perspective, there's been a tax that we've been pushing for repeal for years, is the personal property tax that's levied on businesses. Any update on that? And I mean, give you an idea, we spend about $800. We hire our CPA firm to fill out the actual forms to turn around and pay $500. So we're spending $1,300 on a $500 bill. So
That was
any status on that?
when I worked in the printing business. I worked for a company that had about 30 to 40 employees, and our personal property tax bill was a little bit higher than that, but we spent almost as much on CPA fees to figure out what we owed. And it always bothered me that we paid personal property tax on the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. Okay. I've wanted to get rid of this thing since day one when I got there. In one of the budgets we did, we got rid of a portion of it. Now I want to get rid of the last portion. Dewey Strobel was the lead on this bill, or on this push in the budget. It is one of the things we passed that was outside of the budget, but there was a set aside for money in the budget to cover it, to backfill the local municipalities to make them whole on what we'd be eliminating. The governor vetoed it for some reason. He cited something at one time about out-of-state entities. How would this affect them? And I'm like, they're out of state. It wouldn't affect them at all, in my opinion. We are still working to see if there's something we can do there. I would say the easiest thing to do is next time when we get a Republican governor, pull that thing out of the drawer, dust it off, get it passed, and pass it right away. This is something that's been in place way too long, needs to go away. Businesses need to stop paying this ridiculous tax, and businesses know how to spend this money better than any other governmental entity. So for you, $800 might not seem like a lot, but $800 in a business, that's a small business, that's a lot of money. Plus then you got to pay someone $500 to figure it out. So $1,000 is $1,000, And when you're in a bigger company, it's ridiculous amounts of money sometimes. So, and if this, at the end of the day, the repeal would make the local municipality who gets that money, would make them whole through the state paying them.
And that's what I hear from our city manager and county executive. They just want to be made whole on that.
Exactly. We've heard that too. So,
and it's not a big hole to fill. I mean, it's still, like you mentioned before, every dollar counts in terms of, that come in, whether you're a business, whether you're a local unit of government. So
every dollar counts. And in the state budget, that would have came out to be 240 million, somewhere in that range, to make all the local governments whole. So, and that's on top of all the other ones along the years that we've gotten rid of and made them whole on as well. So
let's changing it up a little bit. You're a board member of WEDC. It's the former Department of Commerce and kind of the lead agency for economic development. What's on their agenda these days? I mean, labor force is certainly on everybody's mind. I mean, we see it, every day, talking to businesses, seeing businesses that have to restrict the numbers of hours that they're a restaurant, for example, is operating, a retail store, that sort of thing. What is the EDC on that, and looking at how they can recruit more people to this area, to the state, those sorts of things?
I have served on WEDC, the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, since I've been a state legislator. We are working on that in the state budget. We reallocated, we forced them to use some of their existing monies to start up a program that they ceased during COVID for talent attraction. Once again, to get that going, to bring people to the state of Wisconsin. Because what do we know? We have good paying jobs. We have a lower cost of living, and we have a great, if you like winter, we're awesome for a state to come to. But we have a great climate, and we have season changes. There's a lot of attractive things here. We got a lot going on. So we want to attract people to the state, so we put some money into that. It is something that got put on hold during COVID, which was unfortunate. We were making some real headway on military bases. When military members are leaving the military, they got to go through trainings and things like that. And they basically, for lack of a better term, work fairs. And we were having an impact there. Then COVID hit. So we're getting back to that. The biggest struggle is a lot of states are looking at the same problems. If you look at all of our neighbors, they're struggling for help too. It always bothers me to see. In fact, I drove by a restaurant the other night. It was last night. It's Tuesday night. It was closed. It's normally not closed on Tuesdays. And I'm like, that's just money that to their bottom line they're losing too. Because every night they're open, they're hopefully making some money, and it's probably due to they don't have enough manpower. So we need to figure out how to get more manpower into this area and to the entire state. Because at WEDC we like to spur employee growth, but right now it's tough to incentivize employee growth if you can't find any employees. It's a struggle we have. I was just talking to people from out of state and they're struggling with it too. I'm going to a job summit to see if we can dig down into this deeper. And is there any secret nut to crack? I think one of the problems we have to solve is a problem at the federal level is common sense immigration reform. There's people that want to come here and work and be good paying, tax paying citizens of this country. I welcome them in, but if you want to come here and cause trouble, stay away. It's one of those interesting nuts that's tough to crack. It's how do you get more people to come to this area? I was speaking to a group at UW Oshkosh recently. These are all young kids. They're 18 to 22. And I always go around the room when I'm at UW Oshkosh and ask where they're all from. And there was one lady, she was from Illinois. And I said, I'm going to come back to you. I got back to her. I said, after graduation, are you going back to Illinois? Or are you going to stay here for all the good paying jobs? And she said, oh, no, I'm staying here. Illinois is a mess. So she said, lower cost of living here, shorter commutes, and it's just an easier state to live in. So I want more people like her. And I want more people like her to come to UW Oshkosh so that we can grow our enrollment there too, and all the other schools throughout the state. And we found that over almost 50% stay here in the state of Wisconsin after graduation. So that's one way we can do this, is get more people from out of state coming to our UW institution and other colleges within the state as well.
You're right. Illinois is a mess.
Yes, it is.
And their Chicago Bears are certainly a mess. So it's, but that's okay for the Bears.
That's fine with me. Same with Detroit Lions.
Well, we'll be looking for that game tomorrow. That should be an exciting one. Well, I think we're getting close to the end here, but one final question. We've been looking at all sorts of avenues in terms of how do we expand the labor force. Actually, we just started have a new partnership with an organization that is looking to go internationally, looking for workers that we can, and some of these potential workers are, soon to be graduates from the UW system, Big Ten schools, that sort of thing. But they want to stay in this country, and but they have to have a year of good, meaningful employment. So we're going to be working on that. But pre-COVID, we started having some conversations with the warden here in Oshkosh about soon to be released inmates from the correctional institution, and talked about how do we keep how do we skill some of those folks up, and how do we keep them in town if employers are willing to take them on. And there were some things that proved to be problematic in doing that, because once upon release they have to go back to their area where their homes.
That is not true now.
Oh, it isn't? Okay.
In the last session, I got a bill passed that says in your last year of incarceration, if you've met all the requirements at that institution or through DOC on job training programs, whatever it might be, you can be transferred to an institution or county jail in the community of where you're going to be released and be eligible for work release. But it's up to the sheriff at the local unit to say yay or nay to that.
Okay.
And they can revoke that at any time if you misbehave. So, for example, if an offender is up at Stanley, but is from Winnebago County, so Stanley has a great program where they go out into the community and work for local companies, whether it be landscapers, whatever it is. But they were having the problem years ago that whenever they were released, they had to go back to Winnebago County, and Stanley is nowhere near Winnebago County. So the beauty of the program is if they're coming back to Winnebago County a year ahead of time and incarcerated in the jail and then eligible for work release, they find that job. Let's use a landscaper, for example. They find that job with the landscaper while they're still incarcerated, going back every night, doing their time. And then on the day they get out, a Thursday, they're incarcerated. They go to work, they come back on Friday, they just get out and they go home that night to wherever their next transition is, their mom's, their wife, husband, whatever it might be. And this transition is smooth. And at the end of the day, they still have that job. And that is the key. You have a job, you're less likely to reoffend. So that was the reason for doing that. The problem is DOC is really not promoting it enough. And I don't think enough sheriffs know about it as well. Because if a sheriff has them in their custody, they're also going to get paid for that incarceration as well.
That's good to know. I'll be making a call to our warden.
Yeah, there you go.
After the holidays here, so.
But
well,
yeah,
with
no,
that,
but also on the people in DOC, it's a great opportunity to train people. We know where they are. They're going to make it their schooling every day. If not, we'll find out why. But it's a great opportunity to give them the skills they need to be a productive member of society. 98% of them, or 97% of them, are going to get out at some point. We
Right.
got to give them the skills to be successful so they do not reoffend.
That's right. Okay, well, great. With that, we would, again, thank you for joining us, Dan. Very, very informative. Next week we have another session with Chris Matheny he's the new president of Fox Valley Technical College. He'll be joining us. And then the following Wednesday, just got word from U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin's office that she'll be joining us for on Wednesday, the 8th at 10 a.m. So be looking for that. Again, Dan, I'd like to wish you and your family a happy Thanksgiving. And a great holiday season coming up here. Keep up the good work, and we hope to continue the progress that we're making in the community and the state. So
Sounds
with
good.
that,
Well, happy Thanksgiving and have a safe one to all.
great. With that, we will conclude, and we will see hopefully all of you next Wednesday for that session. So again, thanks for joining us.